I recently did a video on toxic masculinity and toxic femininity, but what might be of even better use is to discover why some people act like this to begin with. People develop toxic masculinity and toxic femininity because they saw it growing up. If a child only sees men forcing their will on everyone and throwing temper tantrums when they don't get their way, they'll grow up thinking this is acceptable behavior. If a little girl sees all the women in her family manipulate people by playing mind games, she'll grow up thinking this is how women are supposed to act. Children learn what they live. If they live with toxic behavior, that's what they'll learn. Even if their family is healthy, if most of the people they surround themselves with display toxic behavior, they'll often grow to act in the same ways. Children have to be taught better ways by example. It's much easier to live our life for others, much more difficult to be independent and true to ourselves. In other words, it all starts with our molding, sculpting, and armoring. The mold is the box, or the personality that we've become in order to fit in and be worthy of love from others. The adults we know model the behavior, and we adopt it. Sculpting is the process of training us to be a person who would be accepted by the society in which we live. This is how our family and social group taught us to behave like they do. Armoring is when we restrict our own awareness and deny reality because it doesn't fit in with what our image makers have taught us. It's self-censorship. We listen to old internal recordings of our friends and family members telling us what they would do. We don't question their judgments, and without hesitation, we behave the same way. When we're stuck in a pattern of seeing things only as we learned in our childhood, we're dancing on the circle of foxes. We haven't opened our eyes to see other options. People who get out in the world and visit other cities and even other countries learn that there are many ways to go about life. Different doesn't mean wrong. Some new ways are better, some are worse. It's the act of thinking for ourselves and making our own decisions about how to live our life that makes us independent thinkers. This takes us off the circle of foxes. When we no longer live our lives to please others, we've found our independence. The circle of foxes is the story of how we learned to adapt, fit in, and conform. When we have a pattern of accepting everything we were taught in our childhood as factual, our ability to react to life is limited. If we only use the information we received in childhood, we've stopped learning. These patterns from our childhood form what is known as our mask of self-pity, or ashita, which means one who cannot see. This is our lower self. We live for the approval of others. Our very security depends on their recognition and acceptance. Our identity is defined by how others see us. We often don't even realize that we're doing this. Each of us has a unique circle of foxes based on our sitting place, and this is determined at birth. If you'd like to know more about your own personal circle of foxes, please join me on Patreon. The information is below. There's also a more generalized explanation of this circle that applies to everyone, regardless of your sitting place. We've adopted the needy, wounded child syndrome as our personal mask of self-pity. You may remember that the needy point is the first stop on the blue or animal road. an unhealthy shift of the assemblage point. The second step is called wounded. So you can see that the needy, wounded child syndrome is a path down the animal road. This road shows us a life in turmoil with no free and independent thought. You may remember that the assemblage point is like a radio station. We tune into different vibrations and energies based on where it's located. When we allow it to go down the blue animal road, we can't hear the loving voice of our Creator and inner elders. It's only when we can shift the assemblage point down the red human road or down the yellow plant road toward the navel that we're in complete alignment with the Creator. When we start down these paths, it's like tuning in a radio station that gives us good advice and unconditional love. Let's examine this circle of foxes. As most medicine wheels do, this starts in the South. We've fallen into the habit of needing approval, recognition, and acceptance from others. We need to hear praise from others regularly to feed our low self-esteem. We do this in a variety of ways. We may insulate ourselves from diverse opinions by watching only one news channel or blocking people on social media who don't agree with our opinions. Our followers confirm our opinions. By only listening to those we agree with, we fool ourselves into a false sense of righteousness. If we live in a cult community and never see the rest of the world, we'll believe anything we're told. We don't have any other options. When we cut ourselves off from the rest of the world electronically by blocking everyone with a different opinion, we've put ourselves in a similar situation. We find our security in the material world, so we tend to hoard things. This gives us a false sense of being in control. We may hoard things that we really don't need, like clothes we'll never wear again, sentimental items we keep in storage, and things we never use but like to brag about owning. We're out of balance, and we have a hard time finding harmony. In a way, we're operating in a state of shock. We're like a young child lost in the woods, cut off from the wise advice of our inner elders. On the southwest of the circle of foxes, we hold on to our pain. We identify ourselves by it. We wear it like a badge of honor. What I mean by this is that we're not willing to learn from our past mistakes or the mistakes of others. We refuse to see that they could have been mistakes at all. Instead, we blame other people for anything that didn't go as planned. They are responsible for our decisions, our situation, our behavior, everything. We take no responsibility at all whatsoever. Our identity is based on our sadness. We may be the abused woman, the overworked business partner, or the underappreciated self-sacrificing spouse. Our sacrifice proves our worth and is something of which we are proud. Next, we move to the West. You probably remember that the West stands for the physical world, so it may come as no surprise that on this wheel, we're willing to do anything for monetary success, fame, and recognition. We believe we're free, but this is a false sense of freedom. We're on a treadmill, constantly struggling to come up with something new that's bigger and better than the last thing. We're trapped by our own false beliefs. You may ask, what beliefs are those? Just like we discussed in the South and the Southwest, we believe we must have the approval of others to survive. We refuse to learn from our mistakes and the mistakes of others. We believe that monetary success and recognition are the keys to self-esteem. Success is not measured by things or money. It's measured by happiness. Money can't buy happiness. Some things can make you happy. Money can buy a safe environment, but it can't make people respect you. We can't buy integrity, honesty, humility, health, true knowledge, not just the memorization of facts, or hope. These things are priceless. When we move to the Northwest, we doggedly hold on to self-made rules to justify our sense of reality. We have no regard for others or sacred law. The world revolves around us. It's become impossible to put ourselves in another person's shoes or to have empathy. We blame victims for their predicament because we want to separate ourselves from the possibility that such a thing could ever happen to us. If we're confronted with our unfair behavior, we defend ourselves by pointing to others. I'm not the first. Well, what about so-and-so? And other forms of whataboutism will be our defense. The North is the holder of wisdom and knowledge. On the Circle of Foxes, we firmly believe we have a right to do what we want, regardless of the consequences. In the Northeast, we believe we must do things the hard way to prove ourselves. We think this is how we win the respect of others. We won't take suggestions or listen to instructions. We ignore the paved road and go through the thorn bushes instead. If we're responsible for others, they will suffer due to our ego. The East is the holder of enlightenment. On the Circle of Foxes, we believe we're actualizing our sacred dream, when in fact, we're only furthering our personal dream. This is a very dangerous scenario. When people think they have the Creator on their side, it can be a slippery slope. If they're benevolent and giving, this can be good. But this is the Circle of Foxes, so benevolent and giving are really not in the equation. When we feel we're on our sacred path, we have the energy to do what may seem impossible. We're focused. It's almost as if nothing can stop us. On the other hand, if we have fooled ourselves into believing this is true to further our greedy self-interest, it could lead to disaster. This is how dictators are made. They're so convinced of their chosen authority that they often will stop at nothing to remain in power. Millions upon millions of people have died due to one person on the Circle of Foxes being put in a position of power. Our attitude and approach on this wheel, the Southeast, is reactionary. We don't act, we react. Everything we do is prompted by the behavior of others. If we don't like them, we do the opposite of what they suggest. If we consider them to be a friend, we follow every word. This is because we have no true self-esteem. We want to feel good about ourselves, so we think if we do as our friends ask, we will gain their respect. The respect of others is a false sense of self-esteem. People who get their self-esteem from others can often feel powerful when they're afraid of them. Both of these sources must be renewed frequently, so those who rely on them incite fear or surround themselves with only those who agree with them. We're a puppet, and the wise will see this. They will use us and manipulate us to get their way. Since we're blind on this Circle of Foxes, we won't be able to see this at all. We'll think we're being treated with respect. People on the Circle of Foxes often lay awake at night, going over conversations and wishing they had said things differently. They're obsessed with getting revenge on those they perceive as having wronged them. This is what I mean when I say they're reactionary. Instead of planning what they would like to do in the future, they're worried about rectifying the past in one way or another. In fact, their goals and dreams for the future are based on the disappointments of the past. They're more concerned about getting respect from others, proving people wrong, and making them regret their dismissive behaviors. The only way off of this wheel is to go inside, communicate with your inner personas, and find your true self. If you'd like to know more about these many steps, consider following me on Patreon, and I'll be going over some of these steps here on YouTube. So please subscribe and hit that bell so you'll be notified when my new videos come out. Thank you very much for watching.